Today we see Peter go from being the first to call Jesus Messiah to being told, "Get behind me, Satan." So quite some spiritual whiplash there, if you will. But we are going to be getting into that today. We're in Matthew 16, 17, and 18 is where we will be reading today. And we are on day 290 of our Bible in a year, reading through the Bible in the CSB, Christian Standard Bible translation. So let's jump right in. Matthew 16. The Pharisees and Sadducees approached and tested him, asking him to show them a sign from heaven. He replied, "When evening comes, you say it will be good weather because the sky is red. And in the morning, today will be stormy because the sky is red and threatening. You know how to read the appearance of the sky, but you can't read the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation demands a sign, but no sign will be given to it except the sign of Jonah." Then he left them and went away. The disciples reached the other shore, and they had forgotten to take bread. Then Jesus told them, "Watch out and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." They were discussing among themselves, "We didn't bring any bread." Aware of this, Jesus said, "You have little faith. Why are you discussing among yourselves that you do not have bread? Don't you understand yet? Don't you remember the 5 loaves for the 5,000 and how many baskets you collected? Or the 7 loaves for the 4,000 and how many large baskets you collected? Why is it you don't understand that when I told you, beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, it wasn't about bread?" Then they understood that they had not told them to be aware of the leaven in bread, but of the teaching of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, still others Jeremiah or one of the prophets. But you," he asked, "who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus responded, "Blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. And I also say to you that you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not overpower it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth will have been bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will have been loosed in heaven." Then he gave the disciples orders to tell no one that he was the Messiah. From then on, Jesus began to point out to his disciples that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders, chief priests, and scribes, be killed, and be raised the 3rd day. Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Oh no, Lord, will never happen to you." Jesus turned and told Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me because you're not thinking of God's concerns, but human concerns." Powerful words. If you can imagine Peter being in that moment, he was thinking of trying to preserve Jesus, of trying to keep Jesus, but ultimately he didn't know God's ultimate plan. He didn't know what would come. And even when Jesus went to the cross, the disciples they were not aware of what was going to happen until it happened. They were not aware the resurrection was going to happen until it happened. It's one of the reasons we'll see when this happens, they're as devastated as they are, and they scatter. But Peter, his intentions were good. He didn't want Jesus to go die. But, like I said, he didn't understand the actual plan there. He didn't understand that that's what was needed for salvation. Verse 24. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "If anyone wants to follow after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life because of me will find it. For what will it benefit someone if he gains the whole world yet loses his life? Or what will anyone give in exchange for his life? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will reward each according to what he has done. Truly I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Chapter 17. After 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and his brother, John, and led them up on a high mountain by themselves. He was transfigured in front of them, and his face shone like the sun. His clothes became as white as light. Suddenly Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with them. Then Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you want, I will set up 3 shelters here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. When he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud covered them, and a voice from the cloud said, This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. When the disciples heard this, they fell face down and were terrified. Jesus came up, touched them, and said, Get up, don't be afraid. When they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus commanded them, Don't tell anyone about the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. So the disciples asked him, Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first? Elijah is coming and will restore everything, he replied. But I tell you, Elijah has already come, and they didn't recognize him. On the contrary, they did whatever they pleased to him. In the same way, the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands. Then the disciples understood that he had spoken to them about John the Baptist. When they reached the crowd, a man approached and knelt down before him. Lord, he said, have mercy on my son, because he has seizures and suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they couldn't heal him. Jesus replied, You unbelieving and perverse generation, how long will I be with you? How long must I put up with you? Bring him here to me. Then Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and from that moment the boy was healed. Then the disciples approached Jesus privately and said, Why couldn't we drive it out? Because of your little faith, he told them. For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will tell this mountain, Move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. As they were gathering together in Galilee, Jesus told them, The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men. They will kill him, and on the 3rd day he will be raised up. And they were deeply distressed. When they came to Capernaum, those who collected the temple tax approached Peter and said, Doesn't your teacher pay the temple tax? Really quickly. So I mentioned that when the disciples had after Jesus died, they didn't know it was coming. Now, Jesus had said that he would be raised up. But I still think, and you could say, well, he said that he was going to die too. But I think it would be pretty clear to see, if you're the disciples there, I think even without any type of knowledge other than that, you could just kind of look around at the area and see like the temperature and be like, okay, like it's getting heated. They're trying to kill Jesus. They're planning to kill Jesus. So I don't think that would have been like a huge thing, if that makes sense. I think they probably could have just observed the tensions were high and made an educated guess that would happen. And so the fact that Jesus had said that before he died, I don't think for them necessarily they saw it as a prophetic word. And so when he died, they didn't know what to do. Just wanted to throw that little tidbit. Verse 25. Yes, he said, when he went into the house, Jesus spoke to him first. What do you think, Simon? From whom do earthly kings collect tariffs or taxes? From their sons or from strangers? From strangers, he said. Then the sons are free, Jesus told them. But so we won't offend them. Go to the sea, cast in a fish hook, and take the first fish that you catch. When you open its mouth, you'll find a coin. Take it and give it to them for me and you. Matthew 18. At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, So who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? He called a small child and had him stand among them. Truly I tell you, he said, unless you turn and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself like this child, this one is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one child like this in my name welcomes me. But whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to fall away, it would be better for him to if a heavy millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of offenses, for offenses will inevitably come, but woe to that person by whom the offense comes. If your hand or foot causes you to fall away, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life maimed or lame than to have 2 hands and 2 feet and be thrown into the eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to fall away, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into the hellfire. See to it that you don't despise one of these little ones, because I tell you that in heaven their angels continually view the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think if someone has 100 sheep, and one of them goes astray? Won't he leave the 99 on the hillside to go and search for the stray? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he rejoices over that sheep more than over the 99 that did not go astray. In the same way, it is not the will of your Father in heaven that one of these little ones perish. If your brother sins against you, go tell him his fault. Between you and him alone, if he listens to you, you have won your brother. But if he won't listen, take 1 or 2 others with you, so that by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses every fact may be established. If he doesn't pay attention to them, tell the church. If he doesn't pay attention even to the church, let him be like a Gentile and a tax collector to you. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if 2 of you on earth agree about any matter that you pray for, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, I am there among them. Then Peter approached him and asked, Lord, how many times must I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? As many as 7 times? I tell you, not as many as 7, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. For this reason, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. When he began to settle accounts, one who owed 10,000 talents was brought before him. Since he did not have the money to pay it back, his master commanded that he, his wife, his children, and everything he had be sold to pay the debt. At this, the servant fell face down before him and said, Be patient with me, and I will pay you everything. Then the master of that servant had compassion, released him, and forgave him the loan. That servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii. He grabbed him, started choking him, and said, Pay what you owe. At this, his fellow servant fell down and began begging, Be patient with me, and I will pay you back. But he wasn't willing. Instead, he went and threw him into prison until he could pay what was owed. When the other servants saw what had taken place, they were deeply distressed and went and reported to their master everything that had happened. Then, after he had summoned him, his master said to him, You wicked servant, I forgave you all that debt because you begged me. Shouldn't you have also had mercy on your fellow servant as I had mercy on you? And because he was angry, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he could pay everything that was owed. So also my heavenly Father will do to you unless every one of you forgives his brother or sister from your heart. Okay. That was our reading. Now, our questions. Question 1. When Jesus says, If anyone wants to follow me, he must deny himself, what does that look like in daily life? How do you personally practice self-denial for Christ's sake? So this kind of goes into the idea of, I've gotten into this a little bit with the fruit of the Spirit. So in Galatians 5, Paul talks about the fruit of the Spirit, and he I'm trying to remember this. I just actually read it going through this book, but he talks about the fruit of the Spirit and how that's on display, and we also see him mention that you are to crucify your flesh, right? So the idea of crucifying your flesh, it's a very Christianese, if you will, term, but it's a decision that you make daily. You have to constantly decide that you're going to do that, and it is, I mean, essentially what it sounds like. So no, there's not part of you that you are like taking off and nailing up to a cross. But the idea that that is what you're doing. We see Jesus talk about this a little bit here. Now, he says if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. For it's better for you to enter heaven with one hand or with an eye missing than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. Now, with that, does Jesus literally mean? Well, I don't think so, because your eye isn't actually causing you to sin. Your eye might be something that you use when you sin, or your hand might be something you use when you sin, but those aren't causing you to sin. The principle here, and this is what the crucifying your flesh, I think, is getting at too. The principle here is if there is something that is enabling you to sin easier, that you know is there, get rid of it. I've brought this example up before. I used to struggle quite a bit with addiction to pornography, and took a long time. Finally got it to where I was good. I had like apps restricting my phone and things like that, and finally got to where I was good. Like, I didn't need that. Even now, I've got my phone. I mean, I have access to anything, and I don't have the issue, by the grace of God. But there was times early on where I had to cut that off to where I couldn't even get to it, because I had to work on renewing my mind and literally rewiring my brain. But I remember there's one time I had gone for a while without doing anything, and I had no block, no nothing. I had no anything. I was free to do whatever. And I was going through a situation. It was very, very difficult, very emotional, very exhausting mentally, spiritually, emotionally. And I had a moment where I started thinking, and I looked at my phone. I remember this still clear as day. I looked at my phone, and I remember thinking, no one would ever know. And I know, like, I know the process. I know the dopamine is going to hit my brain. I know I'm going to feel better temporarily. But I feel like I need something. And in that moment, while I was thinking that, I had a moment of clarity where I'm like, nope. And I grabbed a hammer and I smashed my phone. Now, I'm not saying that you necessarily need to always do that, but I do think that there may be times where if you think that you need to take an extreme measure, take an extreme measure. Be willing to cut off anything that is causing you to stumble. I think that's what that looks like. Question 2. The Transfiguration gives us a glimpse of Jesus' glory. How might that moment have prepared the disciples for the suffering to come? I think that moment gave them a glimpse of I say the divine, and a glimpse outside of just the physical, to something more. And so it did kind of validate for them, because we've talked about before, the faith that we have, it's not a blind leap. It's not a blind acceptance. It is belief based on evidence. So this was evidence for them. They saw this. They could go back to this. And so I do think it gave them a glimpse of something that they could hold on to later on. Question 3. In Matthew 18, Jesus emphasizes humility and forgiveness as central to the life of the kingdom. In the kingdom, how does our culture's view of power and pride conflict with Jesus' teaching here? I think this is a good one. Being prideful is not really seen as a negative, even in a lot of churches. It's not really seen as a negative. Humility is very much taken for granted much of the time in the church in the West. And the idea of even looking at like the corporate rat race, right? You know, you're trying to get a higher position, you're trying to get more power, and not even just in the West today, but in all of history, like this has been something that is normal. And then Jesus comes along and completely flips it on its head. We see even earlier in the Gospel of Matthew, and we see it in the other Gospels as well. The fact that Jesus says when he talked about when he said that there's no one born of woman that is greater than John the Baptist, but even John the Baptist is last because the first is last and the last is first. That's the Jesse Lucas paraphrase. But Jesus come and flip this completely on its head. And I think it works well because then your focus is not on you. Your focus is not on building yourself up or building your ministry up or getting your name out there or face recognition or anything like that. I've brought this up before, and one of my favorite quotes, and it's something I try to remind myself frequently while doing this, which I know it's hard with all the 700 subscribers I have. So I'm aware I'm not a very big channel, and maybe one day that'll change. Maybe it'll continue to grow. But I try to remind myself frequently, even with the reach that I do have, that this quote, and again, I don't remember who originally said it, but preach the gospel, die, be forgotten. That's our goal. Preach the gospel, die, be forgotten. I don't want people to remember me. I want people to remember Jesus because of me, because I decided to share it with people, because I decided to make this channel and talk about Jesus and do biblical teaching, because I decided to be uncomfortable for a minute and say something to somebody at the gas station that I wasn't planning on talking to, but I felt like I needed to say something. That is a lot easier to do when you're not focused on yourself. You're not focused on trying to get power and pride. And that is why Jesus flips that on its head, because that's the gospel mindset, the kingdom mindset that we need to have. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as all those things help the channel grow. If this has been a blessing to you, you can share it with somebody else. It can be a blessing to them, and word of mouth is the best way that podcasts grow as well. So that can be something that helps this channel as well. Come back every single day. We're going to have more content every single day. Bible reading plan. We're going through the Bible an entire year, different teachings, all kinds of just really great biblical sound stuff like that. So you're not going to want to miss it. Come back, subscribe. Thanks. God bless.